Тест. Дали се слушаме? Да.
Can you hear me? Is everything okay? In other words?
Bills, because we are about to fly. Инаку да го преведам ова, почитувани...
Attendees, please do take your seats because we're about to begin with the second part of the conference. I would like to kindly ask all the attendees to please sit down because we are about to start with the second part of the event. Just like we promised, it's now 2 o'clock and 10 minutes, 10 past 2. And what we promised yesterday, we are about to have the presentation of the Arduino initiative. I don't think there's anyone who hasn't heard about Arduino. It is a platform which was designed as a joint venture between teachers and parents. A lovely idea, a wonderful idea, or a wonderful story that will definitely catch your attention and keep your attention, just like, for example, the last hackathon we had at the previous education conference back in 2017. That's where Arduino was born in a way, and I don't think that there's anyone here who hasn't heard about Arduino. It's one of the most widely used education platforms and play platforms. But what more can I say about this? It would be much better if I leave it up to the guests that we have here today with us, who are the founders, the founder of SmartUp and the program manager for education, Mr. Alexander Lazowski, together with Milena Ignatova, the program manager at Startup. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the floor. Thank you very much. My coming here might have looked like the start that we had back in 2017. Dear guests, dear friends, dear education professionals, and above all, our dear colleagues. I would like to start this presentation with the motto or the message that I have here on the badge. It takes a big heart to shape young minds. Yesterday, when Dr. Rebecca Ellis motivated us to think about some of the happiest moments in my life, maybe due to the atmosphere in the room and the fact that we had so many teachers, I instinctively went back to my school years and I remembered my grade room teacher, Vale. She was a happy memory for me and a happy period in my life, not only because she was one of the most inspiring and most committed teachers that I had the chance to know, had the chance to meet, but also she was there to be my mentor, and with her entire warmth and energy, she largely contributed to the person that I've become today. When years later I understood that a big heart is not quite enough, a big heart is quite enough to do the effect that she had on me and the effect that many teachers have on the life of the generations that go through their classroom. There's a lot of hard work in the background, a lot of sleepless nights, along with a lot of sacrifices, both personal and sacrifices of the environment. My goal for the past few years was to help those teachers, such as Vale, so that they can do this a bit more easily and that they have a better chance to shape the future generations. Now I would like to formally introduce myself. My name is Alexander Lazowski and I'm one of the founders of SmartUp, which is a social innovation laboratory where we dream every day and we try to dream up or create some crazy innovative Ideas that often address real and often burning social issues. One of these ideas is Arduino, and our lovely Arduino community that we're going to talk about today. It's a project that for the past few years, something that I really invested myself both personally and professionally, and it was a huge passion of mine and the place where I invested all of my energy. However, before we start the presentation on the project and the results that we have achieved, I would just like to kindly ask all of us to ask the question why we created all of this. Apart from the statistics that some of our speakers mentioned today, which are the Pearl STEAM's tests, I would like to draw your attention to the real needs of the teachers, or what they said that they really need. At the core of our organization, we have a design thinking approach. And this approach says that in order to create a certain solution, we need to start with the end user. And whenever we create something, it needs to be co-created and created for the end user. Having this in mind, we set off and interviewed hundreds of teachers across the country, and we came to certain very interesting findings. Among them was the fact that many of them, although we initially didn't think so, many of them wanted to make a change in their environment and were willing to try new methods and new approaches to their everyday teaching. But they didn't always have the necessary resources, opportunities, or didn't have an environment that was conducive to doing something like this. Moreover, we understood that some of them perceived institutions as something that's very remote, that they don't always feel brave enough, bold enough to do something new, and that they don't have enough opportunities for professional development and collaboration. The most inspiring and most creative ones among them often said that they feel a little isolated, and that they lack a community that they could turn to and that they could co-create with. Guided by these findings, we started thinking, can you please give me the microphone now?
Innovatywne решения. Okay.
Innovative solutions. Because it's very important for me to convey this message, and I want everyone to hear it. A large part of this message comes from our community and from their work, and I really want it to be universally heard and seen. After our initial findings, we started thinking about the key 3 questions that we wanted to address. The first one was, how could we create an environment or circumstances where teachers and educators would be willing to support each other and to co-create. We understood that in order to answer this first question, we have to have the second one, meaning that in this chain of co-creation, we needed to have the role of the institutions, and that they had to be more open, more responsive for this type of new methods and approaches. In the end, we understood that whatever we wanted to build, we didn't want it to be a one-off solution fitting only the present situation. We wanted it to be a long-term solution and future-oriented. The approach that we chose, I just mentioned it, it is based on design thinking, and it incorporated the elements of co-creation and collaboration. It is very important. We have collaboration at the core of Arduino. Everything that we did was made together with our community. For those of us who may be encountering this concept for the first time, design thinking is a conceptual framework that is intertwined with all of our activities. When it comes to co-creation, as I said, it's the key, it's the core, and it encompasses collaborative and joint work. I really wouldn't want to burden you with the slides since the other few are much more important. Which are some of the benefits? We're going to hear about them a bit later on. The key slide. What exactly is Arduino? Eduino is a collective portal on digital educational content, collaboration and professional development of educators. To bring it closer to you, it is in fact an umbrella under which we are trying to develop various tools and platforms. Right now we have Eduino Teaching, Eduino Learning, and Eduino Early Childhood Development. Our motto is, and our values are given here on the slide. We act jointly right now to have a better future. In order to have this project succeed and be long-term, we needed the support of our partners, particularly the institutions such as the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy. In this entire vision, we can include the Bureau, the Education Development Bureau, the Bureau for Development of Education, which was the leader in this process and the institution that actively approved all the content that we created. From the very start of our mission, we had serious support provided by UNICEF, along with the British Embassy and Synergy and IT Solutions. And just like the moderator mentioned, our journey by accident starts exactly in this place, in this hall. We had our first education event in 2017, and then we spread our mission through various activities. So that today we have reached what's Eduino Playathon 3.0. These are some of the members of our community, which has more than 25,000 members, and which consists of teachers, associates, parents, but also developers, designers, and volunteers. There are a few more photos here that you can see, and what's particularly important for you to see is the participation of this community in all of the activities that we design. How others perceive Eduino, how others see Eduino. In order to better understand what it is that we create, we would like to present a few of our ambassadors and how they perceive the trend or the collective portal Eduino. I will give you a few minutes to read the slides. It is a wonderful feeling when a teacher who doesn't even know you will give you a message. Today you have been the teacher for my students for 2 hours. Eduino for me is another opportunity in my career as a teacher, a good experience. It adds to the motivation to better work with my students. These are in fact our Eduino ambassadors, an initiative that will be explained in more detail a bit later on. To me, Eduino is a family, a team, a library that each student can draw new knowledge from. The role of the Bureau, I briefly mentioned it in the previous slides, but it's very important to emphasize that as an institution, it was a wonderful and irreplaceable partner in what we created, because all of the content and resources that we added there are actively monitored and approved by the Bureau for Development of Education. And the idea is to provide long-term sustainability of this idea by having the Bureau own and lead this platform, of course, by including our broader Eduino community. When it comes to the results, I will soon invite my colleague Milena to say a few more things, but what's very important to me, we wouldn't want to present these results motivated by showing off or bragging or patting our shoulder and so on. The goal our goal in presenting this is to show what the power of co-creation is, and to show the potential that this community has to improve the overall quality of education. This approach also was encountered with international affirmation, because it was confirmed with a special mention in the 100 report on 100 best innovation in education in 2021. And this is a really good thing for Macedonia, because it offers a very concise example of what our teacher can do. Apart from this, we are particularly proud of the fact that we had more than 1,000 teachers who made their own video lessons and who continually create as a community jointly in a very large number. These are some of the examples of the video lessons that we had. This is the Arduino ambassador, Maria Bogatinovska. The lessons, there are more than 4,500. I think there are about 4,700, and they have been seen by more than 4.5 million times clicks. These are really imposing numbers, and these videos have been used by students across the entire country. And we created some sort of video tutorial on different educational tools. And for different educational needs, we created about 70 tutorials of this kind during the COVID crisis. And the teachers used this in order to very quickly train themselves in new digital skills. And they're still being used by the teachers. And they have been clicked for more than 65,000 times, meaning that our teachers and educators are willing to learn and try something new. Before I give the floor to my dear colleague Milena, who is a project manager at Arduino, I would like to once again express my deepest gratitude to all the members of the Arduino community and for the contribution they have invested in this project. To me, they are all big-hearted people who are deserving of every support and encouragement. Thank you very much for listening to me. Milena, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I would like to say that it is truly an honor and a pleasure to speak about Arduino today in front of all of you. I will begin with who Milena is and how I became part of this inventive, innovative, and wonderful story of Arduino. For 21 years, I've been an English teacher. For 5 years, I was assistant director in one big school in our country. I faced many challenges related to students, parents, and teachers. We all know of this triangle, teachers, parents, students. And take my word for it that the job of a teacher is not a simple one, especially at some challenging times. Sometimes it takes superpowers to overcome the challenges. Somebody yesterday said, yes, there is also a need for big love, big passion to do this job. And this love and these superpowers helped me to overcome some of these challenges and to help all other teachers who were faced with these issues. At that time, I needed some kind of a community. I needed collaboration. I needed to communicate with somebody about all of my challenges and about all of my solutions. As project manager of Arduino, I have the chance to give support to all educators in this country to solve the challenges. If we talk about teachers, one of the most important aspects, at least for me, it was extremely important, was the professional teachers' development, developing my professional competencies. So, by this activity of Arduino webinars is one of my dearest activities. There have been a series of events under the Arduino platform. The first one in 2020 helped so much the teachers, the educators at those times when children stayed at home and were learning online. The webinars provided for horizontal learning. This is something that educators often mention. It provided for developing the competencies of the teachers at that period. It was more about how to use all those technical means and tools that can help them to have online teaching going on. Of course, now let's hear some numbers. Let me move aside so that you have a look at the numbers. The numbers are fascinating. The community, the Arduino community, was growing bigger and bigger, basically from one day to another, and that led us to organizing the second sequence of Arduino seminars. We used various forms, methods, and techniques. So we, besides using tools, we started speaking about how the instruction itself should take place. In addition to knowledge and competencies that teachers should have, we also included the element of application of the knowledge acquired. We really created a collection of implemented activities based on different teaching units in different classrooms, and all these teaching units, or what educators call daily preparation or short-term plan, it's all available to all educators so that they can use it when planning their instruction. You can see here how the webinars looked like and how the process was unfolding. In December 2021, it's about 3 months ago, we started the platform for early childhood development. That's about supporting children aged 3 to 10 and their development. What is it? It is a platform where we can find open, free of charge, and validated resources, play activities that can be used in playrooms, in classrooms, and what's also very important, at home. It means that such a platform can be used by all educators, including preschool teachers, class teachers, the professionals such as pedagogues, psychologists, sociologists, and of course parents. And the goal of this platform is to encourage the development of socio-emotional skills. These educational activities that can be found on this platform are a result of the hard work of the educators, and we collected them by co-creating. We created several open calls, and that's how we enrich this wealth, this library, this treasury, national treasury of educational play activities. And in the last call, open call for educational play activities, we expected 150, and we got 912 activities. So a big bravo for all the educators that took part in this activity. These were teachers, preschool teachers, pedagogues, psychologists, or social workers who created in groups or individually play activities by promoting the concept called learning by playing. Here is what the platform looks like, and the reality is that in every play activity there is a description how to do it. It includes materials needed, attachments, annexes. The educators can use those, can print out and design the class in a way that will make it more interesting. What I want to highlight now is that all play activities are easily adjustable, adaptable, and they can be used in any grade, classroom or playroom. We thought, what can be done with these activities? We came to the activity called Arduino Playton or Igraton. It is a creative challenge for children aged 3 to 10 through the method of learning and play. So not just to learn, but to have fun as well. This is the best way to learn at this age. We organized the first Arduino Igraton or Playton in 2020. We were at home, kindergartens and schools were closed, so everything was taking place at home. We achieved big success there because parents recognized these educational play activities and implemented them together with their children in conditions of pandemic, which means we collected 230 reports about activities conducted between the children and the parents. The second Playton was enlarged. Why? Because the schools opened, the kindergartens opened, and then we said, let's have the educators who created these activities to apply them in everyday work. And then it was proven that this is a great number of educators who accepted this creative challenge, and we received 1,200 reports of implemented play activities. 77 families, 51 schools, 53 kindergartens. And then we said the third Playton is no longer a motive, it becomes tradition. Therefore, the Arduino Playton has become a tradition, and we are constantly receiving messages from our community members. When is the next one going to happen? But what motivates us the most are not figures, are not numbers, but these smiling faces, these children whose expressions show that they really enjoyed the time spending on these activities. This is the biggest motive that motivates us to continue on this path. And now some words about our Arduino ambassadors. This is a group for professional collaboration and development. So it's a group of teachers, preschool teachers, so educators, in one word, who were the most hardworking, the most diligent, and the most industrious. As part of the initiative of Arduino ambassadors, we help them to upgrade, to improve professionally, so they participate in different activities and they spend time together. Some of them are here in this room as part of the Arduino team. Our goal is to help them create initiatives and activities that we can implement under the umbrella of Arduino. Now, currently we have 33 Arduino ambassadors. In a month or two, we expect the number to be over 80. What next? What does the future hold for us? Arduino can move just forward, not backward. Under the umbrella of Arduino, there is a number of activities which are already implemented or will continue to be implemented under Arduino. This is what we will be aspiring for in the future. At the moment, we are working on an Arduino laboratory. It is 2D virtual space where the students will be able to learn about natural processes. We're working on a network for learning and science, and on the digital educational plays that you could play on our tablets, which are here at the stand near the front door. What is our message? What does Arduino have to say? Arduino can say to the educators that we are the wind motivating, wind in their back, and will continue motivating you and giving you all kinds of support for what you are doing. For everybody else, we hope you recognized our values thanks to this presentation, and that we made you familiar with all the activities under Arduino, and that you will join our initiative. So we'll be able to dream as well as act together. We invite you to work together for the purposes of having better education for all. Thank you for listening to me, but first of all, let me not forget our partners who unselfishly helped us in any activity. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much, Alexander and Milena. I believe that this was a very informative and fantastic idea, how this idea was born and how it was then turned into reality with joint efforts and collaboration. So we've reached the next topic that I most definitely think will be very interesting to you. We are talking about the interplay between well-being and academic achievement. Before I give the floor, I would like to take just part of a second to ask you, when I say well-being, what is the first association? I'm not asking, I'm just kindly asking you to think. I'm not asking you a question, but what's the idea that comes to your mind when I say well-being? When it comes to me, I must say that I get cold easily, and when I think of well-being, the first thing that comes to mind is the sun. And that's a problem, because when I think of the sun, I immediately think of the sea as well. And when I think of the seaside, I immediately think of nice beaches and so on and so forth. Now, going back to the Balkans, the way that we know it, where's the nicest sun? Where do we have the nicest and cleanest sea? And where do we have the longest Riviera? Seashore. Where else if not in the Republic of Croatia? And it is exactly from Croatia that we have a very big friend of North Macedonia. We're talking, in fact, about Lana Jurko, who will tell us something more about the connection between well-being and attainment. I have to mention that for a longer period of time, it is clear that well-being plays a key role in life outcomes. But since recently, we've collected more and more evidence, a growing pool of evidence, that it directly affects academic attainment. When it comes to Lana Jurko, she's the executive director of the network of education policy centers, and her particular areas of expertise cover participatory policy creation, developing educational policies, inclusive and democratic school policies, and democratic governing management of schools. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Lana Jurko.
Благодарам за поканата.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Good day.
This is not my first slide, but okay. I'll try to deal with it anyway, because if I go back, it goes to this. So, what I wanted to tell you that actually this is my first slide, but sorry. Okay, so you can see that I've changed the title of the presentation from what I was given as a title to "Until we help our children feel safe, we cannot help them learn." And I also changed the second bit from connections between well-being and attainment to connections between well-being and learning. Because for me, school is not really about academic achievement, it is really about learning. And well-being, to talk about well-being, we can't today, I think, open this topic without saying that there is no well-being without peace. And this is number one priority for any well-being to exist in the world. It's very hard to talk about that today for any of us who are from the region and have felt it, but any of us who have empathy towards what it means to be in war, to be a child in war, to be a mother with a small child in war. And this really kind of, I think, needs to be a call also from this conference, a call for peace and well-being of all people on the world. And now I hope I will stop to be this emotional and get to a little bit more about well-being in school. So, when we talk about well-being in school, generally there's two dimensions that we can discuss. One is about safety, which then has socio-emotional safety and physical safety. And the other one is about community, because it is community that makes us feel that we belong, works on our relationships, and it's about peer relationships in schools, it's about teacher-learner relationship in school, but it's also about teacher-to-teacher relationship in school. It's about equity, and it's about having a voice and visibility. And when we talk about these things, we're actually talking about inclusion. So for me, there is no well-being if we don't talk about inclusion, because good school is only good if it's good for all learners in that particular setting. I think it's also important to say, I'm sorry, too many things to do with hands. So when we talk about safety, wrong way, we talk about bullying as the number one thing that prevents safety in schools, and both physical and socio-emotional. And I don't really want to go into the definitions of bullying. I'm sure you all know the definitions of bullying, but I want to interact with you for a minute. So if I look at the audience here, I think our average age 45 maybe, with some exceptions up and down. And when we went to school, when you were in school, how many of you witnessed bullying? Could you raise your hands? Okay, so almost everybody. And how many of you were victims of bullying? Okay, less hands here. But I think there is one thing about also sometimes, and it's okay, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, it's not easy to say that you're a victim of bullying. This is something we need to change, because there is so much bullying, and if you see the percentages, this is OECD data from 2018, So 23% reported being bullied at least a few times a month. Boys and low-achieving students in reading were more likely to be bullied at least a few times a month than girls and high-achieving students. That is what's self-reported by students. On average, across OECD countries, students who reported being bullied at least a few times a month scored less. I mean, 21 points, 5 points, 3 points. Basically, this does not help their learning. And when we talk about bullying, and then for the region, or this is for Europe, these are the numbers. So the last one is 12 points, that's the Netherlands. The first one here is Russia with 36 points, self-reported bullying. But what is actually bullying? It is violence. And this is something that we need to talk to much more than what we do. And I think that what is important to say about bullying is that it comes from positive attitude toward violence. So we actually live in cultures where violence is accepted. Oh, by the way, I didn't say for our region of the Southeast Europe, Western Balkans, it's between 27 to 23%. So that means that in every classroom, self-reported, at least a quarter of your classroom is experiencing bullying, a few times a month at least. That is a huge, huge number. And that is self-reported, and as we just checked here, it's not easy to report it. So although these were anonymous surveys and they're quite reliable, we probably can presume that there might be even more than that. The fact that we accept violence, that we don't understand what violence is, might have meant that if we were doing this survey when I went to school 40 years ago, when I was a 15-year-old, I might have not reported it because I didn't know it was bullying, because I didn't think that teasing or isolating or pressuring me to do things was bullying, but it is. Now we know that, and that is violence. And we need to really talk about these things very strongly. UNICEF has started this work a long time ago, actually in Croatia, under the name Stop nasilje među djecom. I really like that they use the word violence there, so stop peer violence in schools, if we translate it to English closely. It was developed by Jasenka Pregrad, who was an excellent expert, unfortunately passed away just maybe a week ago, very sadly. But her program has been something that has been based on Olveus, has been translated to all languages and was used, I'm sure, in Macedonia as well, but throughout the region and all the way to Mongolia. However, none of the systems have taken up this anti-bullying program and systematically implemented it into schools. And this is a message from me to policymakers, if they're still here, that is a worthwhile whole school approach to teaching children about bullying. It's not about blaming neither the bully nor the victims, because of course there are reasons why bullies are bullies, and that's something that we also need to explain to children. It's not black and white. Nothing is black and white, and we need empathy and solidarity and whole school approaches to attack these problems. To move from bullying, what about community? So a sense of belonging to school is especially important for kids who are at a greater risk of exclusion or are in a vulnerable position. If you look at this, so 2 out of 10 students feel like outsiders in school. So now looking again at your classrooms, that's quite a lot of kids in your own classrooms who feel like they're left out of school. This ranges differently across the region. This is the average, especially, particularly for the Southeast Europe region. And then when you look at this table, another OECD thing, what does this tell us? The disadvantaged students feel they do not belong at school more than those who are advantaged. So it's not great for anybody, But then if you look, the darker points are the advantaged students, and the empty circles are disadvantaged students, and across the world, disadvantaged students feel like they belong less in school. And if you see what the questions were asked in order to get to this data, so this is the index of sense of belonging, questions where I feel like an outsider or left out of things at school, I make friends easily at school, I feel like I belong at school, I feel awkward and out of place of my school, I feel lonely at school. So these are also not building communities out of schools. And this is what is needed for well-being. We all need to feel like we belong. And then we come to equity. This, for me, maybe is the most, let's say, drastic thing, because we have low rates of entry, progression in learning, as a final and most visible outcome of socioeconomic process that marginalize, disappoints, and alienates children and youth. A toxic mix of poverty and discrimination results in them being excluded because of who they are. And maybe they're not excluded in the sense that they are not in school. Most of them are in school, but are not included, they don't feel they belong. And of course, if you look at any data, are staying less years in school. We call that dropout, but actually it is push out. This is something that Paul Gorski has been using as a new term. I think it's very important that we think of the language we use. So when we say dropout, we're saying that they've dropped out. It's like somehow it's them to blame. But actually the system is pushing them out. And it is our responsibility that this does not happen. So the effects of poverty are the most drastic ones that show unequal attainment in schools. I will just give you a quote from a young girl about teachers. She says, "They cannot help us if they do not know how it feels. They can say, but they actually do not. They can say that they understand, but they actually do not. It means nothing, because they do not know, they do not understand. Maybe they should be included in some workshops so they finally understand how it is." So a child from low SES background understands that she is not understood, and that there is a need somehow from the teachers to learn how it is to be in her situation. And we can come back to the well-being of the only thing I can think of what helps there is social justice programs. We know that they've been around for a while. A lot of teachers have gone through them, and things are slightly improving. But again, for the most vulnerable and most marginalized, too slow for them to matter, because as we know, every child has only one childhood. And if they go through it feeling excluded and not being able to do what they dream to do, then we're really disappointing them, and actually we are pushing them out. Of course, COVID doesn't help the whole situation. This is data that the World Bank said before the war. So in 2020, that adversity poverty rates will actually be, the poverty rates will be greatly increased in Albania and North Macedonia by 6%, they say. So this was even before we now have the new crisis. And of course, who are the most vulnerable? The children. UNICEF data 2017, for example, in Romania and Turkey, they're over 1.5 times more likely to be poor than adults. So, things to do there. Then we come to having a voice. We're quite loud. We've all put policies in our systems where we have student councils, parent councils, and so on. And we're actually working with our partners from Macedonia on one project called Start the Change. It's dealing with student voices. And as it says in the beginning, establishing just a council and sporadically asking children or students how they are and how they're doing is not giving them a voice. They are in this situation. We ask them, sometimes, but what they say doesn't seem to matter. When they don't, there is a challenge also of closed doors. Sometimes we don't ask them at all. We just have these forms. When they ask something, we trivialize it. If we don't trivialize it, sometimes we listen to them and don't do what we said to do. And the worst thing we can do is ask them what they want and then not respond with why this is probably, maybe sometimes not possible. So of course, it's not, I'm not saying schools can be run purely by students, but if we ask them, and if we have given them a chance to voice it, then we must give them feedback of why something is or not possible. And of course, we should especially talk to them, as we heard from our speakers before, about digital tools, because many times they know so much more than we do. And I'm sure they could also tell us, as quotes from one of the researchers we did shows, they could tell us where the violence happens, how it happens, and they can tell us so much more about their own experiences. So yeah, unfortunately we leave our students believing that they cannot change anything, and whatever they say, it doesn't really matter because it won't change. I won't go into all the quotes, there is too many, but the general feeling is when we try to do something, there is a barrier, and we cannot cross that barrier. So, and then COVID-19 happened. And what it did is, of course, it deepened education inequalities. Standard distance learning formats we heard already from many speakers before me are really geared more towards more motivated, self-sufficient learners. Self-efficacy was proven in many research to have been actually the one criteria that could predict whether kids would do well on distance learning or not. And among the 23 countries when we were doing this research, support was relatively low in access in remote areas. So we are talking about digital gap, which we already touched in the panel. School meals, so suddenly they were left out with something they had while they were in schools. Learning materials for minorities, especially in languages. And it's about, so when I started off, I tried to use my very little knowledge of the languages of the people in this room. And I heard which languages were mother tongue languages in the system from the speaker before me. So I tried to use all of them if I could. We don't do that to children. We don't use language in a classroom in a sense of it's about understanding each other. Even if we are not proficient, we can say something, it makes a big difference to every single child. And then, of course, very little was also done, percentages are there, from child protection services. So we had this already. Sorry, mixed somehow, that was a mixed slide, I didn't have it like that. This is, I love this one. Ceci n'est pas une école. Yeah, this is, it came very early when the digital learning came, this slide. And it tells us, yes, the computer is not a school. School is so much more than only listening to the lectures and being present. What we know is that online classes created technical and substantive problems, connections, equipment difficulties, but also they created stress. I would say that for all of us who were in these 2 past years, were more burdensome and stressful than the years before that. We missed the human connection, but we also were looking at these computers forever and staring at our own face in Zoom, which is quite tiring. But for the kids, it was especially stressful. The workload was very crazy. From focus groups, 29 focus groups, North Macedonia, Portugal, and Croatia showed that the organization was quite poor, a lack of breaks between periods, classes starting too early, ending too late. And this was also stressful for all the teachers as well. So it wasn't like only the kids were stressed. Everybody was stressed. And we did too little to actually support their well-being, especially socio-emotional. They were inability to engage in a group work. This is all they were complaining about, which you can understand. And then when they got back to schools, this separation of not using common rooms, they couldn't go on to breaks together, while all the time in all our countries, most of the restaurants were open, coffee shops were open, but schools were closed. And that's something that is really fascinating, isn't it? I don't think we need data to know that improving of learners will improve learning. We need to understand that the right to physical and mental health is just as important as the right to learn, and it is the right of every child. Schools are a key environment for the development of children's well-being, for creating and fostering inclusive school climate and culture. So this is something that I think is important. It is not only about academic achievement, it is about how you feel in school. And for that, inclusive school climate and culture is important. Two factors we already covered, safety and community, but there is also, of course, academic surroundings and physical surroundings. So it's not unimportant how physically safe your school is. We've seen some schools in the region which are not really, for example, in Croatia after the earthquake, we have very many schools who are not physically safe. So it's not only about community and safety in the sense I told about, but also about this physical safety and also about academic. What do we offer them academically? And it is about expecting every child, so high expectations from every child. And it's not about getting a 5, but moving from where you are. So this is what is a successful teacher. Oops, what did I do now? A positive classroom atmosphere where teachers recognize and support students' effort is crucial for learning. Again, something we know. This, I think, is crucial. So systems need to further educate students and teachers on how to recognize and define violence, particularly that which occurs online, something that we talked about already. Cyberbullying is something that happens every day. We don't know much about it. Similarly, schools should acknowledge students' suggestions and work on tools that can further reduce the level of peer violence that the current generation of youth experience in various online channels. They could really be our help there. So we need to talk to them. Co-creation of classes and teaching process. Yeah, that's something that is another recognition. They need ownership over their learning, and this can be done. Of course, teacher competencies, continuing professional development. We heard a lot about that for today as well. Data on students' experience is needed by lacking. That's something that we know. So we should not only look for their achievement, but their experiences. So how do we monitor how they feel in schools? And this survey is done by PISA every 2 or 4 years, and only on 15-year-olds are not enough. So we need to devise ways how to monitor learners' experience and not only learners' achievement. We need to collect data with attention and respect that avoids labeling, that stigmatizes, and ensure that when we collect data, no learner is harmed. I don't think I've said something that you haven't heard before. But I really want to say that something to refer to the panel that was before me about how do we prepare kids for the future. So, you know, the future is unknown, but we know that one competence is crucial, and this is managing change and uncertainty. We live in uncertain times. Every day we change, something changes. We've just had a drastic change in the world 2 weeks ago. And then what we do is we do not talk to children about it. So I would say, as a first step towards well-being of children everywhere in the world, but maybe particularly where this is happening close, and this is also us, is to start to talk to kids about the war. They need to understand what's happening, because if we ignore it, they're actually under more stress. They know something is happening, they're listening to the news, or even if they're not listening to the news, they hear you, they feel the stress. And especially for young children, this is especially stressful. So we need to devise ways in which we can find how we can talk to the children about war in a way that they can understand, in a way that they can ask questions, and also in a way which is not one-sided, black and white, and exclusive to anybody. Because after all, we are all humans. Thank you very much. I forgot to say blagodaram, panemderi, tešekuler, hvala.
Dodека se местиме позади, ако може уште малку глас, минута паузу ке кемите пара-пар. Окей. Морам да се обратам до организаторите. Ми побара 5 минути пауза за тоалет. Дали може да им излезам ја во пресред? 5 минути тоалет пауза. 5 минути тоалет пауза. Превзимам одговорност. Благодарам.
The organizers have asked, I would like to ask the organizers if it's possible to have a 5-minute toilet break. I authorize it. Let's have a 5-minute break.
Почитувани присутни, морам да ве замолам да се прибереме во салата. Во изчекување сме и на...
We are waiting for the last panel session, meaning the fourth in line.
на сала, на...
I would like to kindly ask you all to enter so that we can start with the fourth panel. So we are slowly coming back. Because often in the Balkans, when you ask for toilet break, it turns into a cigarette break. Thank you very much. Once again, I have to go back to what Lana said because it was very inspiring, a wonderful presentation, and the topic itself, the connection between the well-being and attainment. And it got me thinking, those of you who are listening to me through translation, this entire great philosophy, how could we translate this philosophy into 3 words and 2 conjunctions? In Macedonia, we say, literally translated, feed your soul so that it listens to you. And it applies to children as well. Feed children, I'm not referring to food. Give everything to the children and they will be open to listening. Now we are proceeding with the last panel discussion planned for this conference, which is on the topic how to develop schools in order to, how should schools evolve and support student well-being. One of the main roles here goes to schools. They are one of the main stakeholders. How should they evolve to provide support to the well-being of children? How can they take a more prominent role in the life of students? And who among the staff can and should start doing this role? We'll hear something more about this from the next group of panelists. And for this purpose, I would like to invite the moderator of this panel discussion, Ognen Spasovsky, a professor at the Institute of Psychology at the University St. Cyril and Methodius. Dear colleague, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to repeat myself. If you have a question, please do write it down in the Q&A form and submit it to some of the volunteers wearing UNICEF T-shirts who will then give them to the panelists. I wish you a fruitful discussion and enjoy. Thank you very much. I suppose everything is fine with the equipment. As it was already announced, at this panel discussion we will have Professor Violeta Petrovska-Beška as a panelist from the University Cyril and Methodius, the Institute of Psychology. Valdeta Adili, a school psychologist at the secondary school Drita in Kičevo. And Mr. Alvin Salimovsky, the principal of the school Brakja Ramis Hamid in Skopje, will attend via Zoom on a video conference link because he is isolated due to COVID since before a few days. Welcome. I would like to greet you all, welcome you all. I'm very glad to see you as participants in this discussion. I hope that we will have a very fruitful discussion with both the panelists and the other guests at this conference. Once again, welcome. From the very title, How Should Schools Evolve to Support Student Well-Being, we can see that it is schools that are in our focus, together with well-being. Schools that have a very important role for sure in developing and giving psychosocial support to children and developing and fostering well-being. We will discuss what it is that schools can do, whether they have sufficient resources. I hope what their role is. I believe that we all agree that schools do have a very important role in this process of pursuing the best interest of the child, because every school in our country has its own supporting service, professionals, professional associates. We don't have the equal number of the supporting staff everywhere, but there are psychologists, pedagogues, social workers who have a very important role in creating this support network, and who we may hear some inspiring factors and instances that can improve the well-being of students. Most likely the focal point of this discussion would be the mental health culture, some sort of a mental health culture, and I believe that exactly this topic is the most important thing in creating a different platform or an evolved approach towards psychological well-being. So that the discussion will start with Alvin, who I suppose is already here online. What do I mean when I say mental health culture, culture of mental health? This notion, I believe that this notion would give way to for us to discuss whether we're using predominantly whether we are relying on the medical approach, which is oriented towards the symptoms of the disorders in the mental health of the children, whether we are under the influence of this model, meaning identifying or giving diagnosis of various disorders through a typical medical position, or is it finally time that we started talking about the change in this approach towards well-being and mental health, where we would start using a holistic approach in building networks, one or more networks, a network which is among the professional staff and students, a peer network among the children, meaning peer support, then network in the work between the professionals working, supporting staff working in the school and the teachers, where this holistic approach would make it possible to develop the natural potential, to harness the natural potential of children for well-being, so that the child can fulfill the natural potential it has for growth and well-being, and which would inevitably lead to development of socio-emotional competences. I hope that we will learn very inspiring discussions on this topic, and as already announced, I would like to start with Mr. Alvin as a principal. Alvin, are you online? Can you hear us? I can hear you very well. Can you hear me? Alvin, as a principal of a school, I believe that you have good insight into and have very comprehensive insight into what I previously referred to as a mental health culture. What are your impressions? What are your experiences in terms of this culture of mental health? What are the attitudes in schools? What are the attitudes of the various stakeholders, the supporting staff, the professionals, the teachers, the parents, when it comes to mental health? Good day. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me. I'm really sorry that I was not able to attend this conference in person, but I have colleagues, representatives of our school, who are there representing us. I'm not a psychologist myself, and I must apologize in advance if I make any mistakes or say something that's not in line with psychology, but I will speak from my experience as a teacher and manager, a school manager. The general attitudes towards mental health in our country immediately make an association to mental diseases or disorders, and we usually avoid talking about them, meaning that it is still a taboo in our environment. What I have noticed in my 17 years of professional work in education is that mental health and mental well-being depend on several factors. To start with, the environment or support by the parents, the upbringing, then whether parents speak about the child's emotions and the problems that the child is facing openly, then the broader environment, meaning the social environment, whether the environment that the child is in does it foster talking about feelings and problems? And finally, maybe even the school itself, whether the student knows what the role of the psychologist in the school is, whether the teachers are trained on how to act or deal with this type of problems, whether the teachers invest sufficiently in motivating or guiding students through workshops or extracurricular activities so that they can overcome this situation, or as we teachers often say, go see the psychologist or the pedagogue. That's not my job. Go see the psychologist. I'm sorry, Alvin. Have you noticed more recently, in the past few years, with the prolonged closure of schools and online teaching, distance learning, whether there were any changes in this area? When it comes to mental health of students, we are all aware that the pandemic had a negative effect, adverse effect on all of us, and including students. We as a school were aware of this from the very beginning. Once the schools closed down in March, and we immediately started working on not leaving students alone. And we tried to continue with the daily activities, meaning that we started organizing distance learning. Organizing distance learning for more than 2,000 students and 120 teachers was not an easy task in the least, but thanks to my team of professional associates and teachers, we managed to organize the process, and the next week already, on the 16th of March 2020, we started online distance learning as a principal of one of the biggest schools in the Republic of North Macedonia. Everyone was in panic. While everyone was in panic, the media, we constantly heard about the new virus that we knew absolutely nothing about. I felt some sort of a moral and professional obligation towards this more than 2,000 students to take immediate action. And my guiding principle in this situation, the only important thing for me at that moment was to pay maximum attention to the mental health of the students. Our goal as a team was to react as quickly as we can to alleviate the negative impact of the news on the children. It wasn't important to us whether we were going to achieve the teaching goals or the lessons at that point. The only important thing to us was to keep in touch with our students, to encourage them, to motivate them, stimulate them to work, to start creatively thinking, to give them a chance to have some activities, to fill their time with activities while they were at home, to motivate them, to encourage them to explore, and to wait, to be very impatient in waiting for the next lesson. Thank you very much, Alvin, for this extensive answer. There will be another round of questions where you will give us we will ask you more about the specific activities, but you gave us a good introduction with the activities that your school did. And I would like to ask Valdeta, as a school psychologist, Valdeta, what is it that professional associates, the supporting staff in the school can do? Are they doing enough? The non-teaching staff, have they managed to create a good network of collaboration with the teachers, and what is it that the teachers can do? These are a few topics, but I hope that you will be able to give us an answer to all of this. And just give me a second first to share what an honor it is to be together with you and to share this space together with my Professor Pishka. When I accepted to be part of this panel, I said that I immediately said I would want to come. And when I saw that I was going to be with my professor, I was a bit in awe, a bit intimidated, but I'm very glad that I'm here after all. The invitation to be here, if someone told me 15 years ago that I would be sitting here as a school psychologist and that I would be talking about what a psychologist can do, I would think that this person was crazy. Because I am the first psychologist in my school in Kijevo. Psychologists were introduced in education a bit later on. There were pedagogues previously, and they were generally support to the teachers. But it was thought that the teacher was enough for the children, that the children didn't need anything more. The task that the children had to do was to come and pay respect to the teacher. When I started doing these activities, I was a bit fearful, even embarrassed to do them. I started doing workshops, I was organizing things, and I always had to explain why these people have to stay 5 minutes longer for their training. This is not my story. I know a lot of psychologists and I listen to all these things, not only my personal experience, because I've heard it from many of my peers. Because we still have a mentality that the children only need to come to school, be respectful, learn, answer tests and sheets, and that's all. Whatever happens in their behavior or, with their feelings, that's not school's job. Was it like that at the beginning? Yes, at the beginning it was like that, but times have changed, and the teachers saw that they only wanted, the teachers thought that children should only learn, but children have proven to believe otherwise, that's not the only important thing. It's not enough for them to only come and answer questions at the board and learn information, that it is important to experience new things, to grow in this process of schooling. The psychologists have a lot to do in schools. Our curriculum says that we are there for the children and we need to provide support to the children, and every psychologist is invited to find the best way to support children, because that's way we need to leave an open door so that they can come. What are the hours for individual work? We need to listen to what interests them. We need to organize workshops. At a certain moment, I had an art club, I had a drama club, whatever children needed. These things are important to children, and I wanted to give them to them. There was a time where I ended up as turned out to be someone who the teachers felt as competition in literature. The teachers in literature felt as competition because they never dealt with poetry. But when children came to see me, they told me they wanted poetry, that they wanted to do something. They have nowhere to practice that. So I tried to come forward and help them. There weren't a lot of clubs there. And after the pandemic, I think that they're even more interested in giving back to the school, sharing their creativity with the environment. They want to speak about bullying. Whenever I teach them about bullying, they're very brave, encouraged to raise their hands and say that they have been victims of bullying. How does it go usually with during the lessons with teachers? Has there been a change in this culture of collaboration between teaching and non-teaching staff? Yes, the awareness is higher than it used to be, at a high level. But there are still teachers who think that see sending a child to a psychologist as a punishment. And they complain that children are not sitting still. If they don't sit still, they will go see a psychologist, and they threaten with it as a punishment. Can the psychologist be successful if the child is sent there for punishment? The moment of meeting between the child and the psychologist is very important, and it can be very powerful. The way that the psychologist approaches the child can be important. I believe that things would be much different if we change this culture of sending the child to the psychologist, and if they're given support on various grounds in order to support their psychosocial, emotional well-being, and not only to send them there if they've done something wrong.
It's very important, and Lana said it before. Unless they feel good with themselves, they won't be able to learn. If they, let's say, if they feel better with themselves, then they'll be better achievers. It's tricky to work with high school students. They're not only rebels vis-à-vis the teachers, but also vis-à-vis their families. So I'm happy to facilitate a process to get them understand that it's okay what they're going through, that it's okay to be sometimes rebellious, and that things happen in that period of life, and that not always the physical appearance or the intelligence can be monitored, and it's okay sometimes not to be okay, not to be feeling okay. There is big pressure on the good students, and there are high expectations of them always to be good. And thank you, Valdeta, very much. When talking about the psychosocial skills, Professor Violeta is working on projects for developing psychosocial skills. A question to her, bearing in mind that the development of these skills is really a wide field. Can you tell us more specifically about the areas in which you act? So I could start answering questions provoked by the previous speakers. I want to respond to them, otherwise I may be labeled as insufficiently socio-emotionally developed. Before answering Ognen's question, Valdeta mentioned that I was her professor. I was also Ognen's professor, also Nadica's professor. So many people here, and probably many others. I wasn't Luli's professor. Why am I saying this? Okay, I'm a professor and I teach students. Some would say I teach more academic skills than what's my engagement here. I teach methodology, psychometrics, those subjects with bombastic titles, but I also teach conflict solving skills. Boro was one of the beneficiaries in one of the courses that I held. Regarding the guide for developing socio-emotional skills and for community service is through the example of developing socio-emotional skills in children and in in students and in young children. All these engagements are not happening through the university, but they are connected with my engagement as a head of an expert team, which under the Center for Human Rights and Conflict Resolution, there have been projects, many year projects with UNICEF and many other donors, including inter alia, the project that I'm going to introduce now. I would like to introduce two projects, actually, two programs that we created together with, or shall I say, under the lead of World Bank headquarters in New York. And they were implemented in cooperation with the Center for Human Rights and Conflict Resolution. They were supported, of course, by the Ministry of Education and Science. All those who work in schools know that without their support, it wouldn't have been a success. The first program that was happening in 2015-2016, I'm talking about pilot projects, was dedicated to the component of which is called greed. And we consulted many people, and the expert team in the center translated it into a Macedonian word, which is very rarely used, very literal word, but I hope that it will become more used and more widespread. The pilot project related to greed and entered in all primary schools in Macedonia with Macedonian and Albanian as languages of instruction. All other languages of instruction were not involved. And the direct beneficiaries of this program were about 2/3 of the students, which is more than 11,000 students from grades 6 and 7, which is age 11, 12. Why 2/3 and not all? I'll tell you later. So the goal of the program was for it to be efficient and effective, with very little intervention, to contribute to students becoming more achieving, to teach them to set goals for themselves and to employ hard work in order to achieve these goals. Hoping that this will help them to achieve success in lives. The program itself was developed with a team of experts from the University of Pennsylvania, very well familiar to Ognen. The team led by Professor Angela Duckworth, who in the circles of psychology is considered to be the most deserving for the concept of greed to be widely accepted. She was a maths teacher, then became a professor at university, and from her practice at school came her need to deal with greed and to promote this concept further. So what is she saying? Differences in students' achievements with same level of intelligence is due to the difference in their greed greed, sorry. We psychologists explain it through various factors such as motivation and so on, but they say greed is the main factor, one of the main non-cognitive factors, because all modern research has shown that the non-cognitive factors, especially the greed, is equally deserving as intelligence, which is the major cognitive factor for students' achievements, but not only achievements at school, but also achievements in life in general. If we develop greed in children and teach them to behave in a perseverant and dedicated manner, this is what greed means. It is guaranteed, their success in life is guaranteed, and with that they will have a guaranteed well-being at the end of the day. The goal was to make a more efficient and economical program so that students could achieve a lot in a short period of time. Therefore, the program consisted of methods and topics that allow for 5 consecutive periods. For every period, separate workbooks were prepared, and they were dedicated to help students practice the so-called thorough practice, which is different from from what we call exercising. Just how you learn maths by doing exercises, by solving exercises and tasks. In those notebooks, there was an explanation of the concept, what thorough practice means. There were activities asked from students to do during the period in order to learn how to practice thorough practice. There are several components into it. The first component is how to set a goal in the form of a challenge, not just any goal, but a challenge. Secondly, how to fully focus on achieving this goal. Then the third was how to ensure feedback about whether what you are doing is good or not, whether you are on the right track or not. And the fourth phase is how, based on the feedback, you can improve your behavior, you can correct your behavior in order to achieve the goal. And there is a number of evidence in science that this is something that can be learned. In our educational system, we expect that students come to school knowing this, that somebody taught them this at home and that they know that. The educational system does not teach them how to be successful in the learning process. Another interesting fact for this pilot project is that, as I said, about 11,000 students from grades 6 and 7 were the beneficiaries of this pilot program. However, half of them did it on their own. So during the class period, they get the notebooks and they need to fill in the exercises in the notebook, and the other half of them not in the same classroom, but in other classroom to do it with with the class teacher, the teacher responsible for that particular class. There were handbooks prepared for the teachers. Training was delivered for the teachers. The main trainers are here, Safet and Renata. Do you have data? I wanted to say about the second program, okay? About the effects. I'll ask you in the second circle. That was the first pilot program. The second took place in 2018-2019. And we wanted to try something more than grit, not just grit, but to get into more in a broader field, and it was done only in primary schools in the municipalities in Skopje. Our target group were 8th grade students, 14 years old, and half of the schools in Skopje, both rural and urban, were included in the project.
This program now consisted of delivering seven consecutive homeroom lessons, and it started. The first lessons were on accepting the role of education in providing well-being of people, because we are already witnessing that children are losing their faith that they need education for anything in their life. Because in reality, we're faced with people who are very unsuccessful academically and who became very successful in life. This may be, in quotation marks, this success, because according to me, having money does not equal success. And we need to accept this important role that education has and to develop influence into having this open mindset or open mindset or growth mindset, meaning that the essence of this mindset is that anyone can become smarter, more intelligent if they work harder and do more difficult tasks, meaning that talent is not so important anymore. The work we do is what is important, and even when we conduct certain analysis, when we compare these Far East cultures with the Western cultures, when we compare them, we say that the difference in which why are they successful, more successful there than the Western ones when it comes to busyness and productivity and performance or well-being. This is because growing up, we tell children, you're so smart, you're so beautiful, look at you, such a beautiful boy, such a beautiful girl, such a smart girl. We see it as intelligent, but there they don't say that. They say, my beautiful boy, I can see you've tried so hard. Or my beautiful girl, you really did your best. So that's a completely different approach, which does not rely so much on the intelligence, on the IQ, but on the hard work. Then there were lessons where we were supposed to foster or encourage curiosity among children, an important element. How we practice thorough practice, how we face failure, and how you strengthen the resilience, the ability to recover from failure, and how to build positive habits to support your own development, or what's called socio-emotional support. What is interesting to know that in this program, This program consisted of 2 complementary approaches to learning. I promise that I will not speak so long for the second question. It's one thing the children learn through the worksheets and the presentations given by the teachers. But the other approach was that what they were learning at school they had to teach then the same things to 5 graders. So on 3 occasions, there had to be vis-a-vis a student, a 5th grader, and tell this 5th grader the key takeaways from what they had learned, so that the 5th grader would learn something as well. And at the other lessons, mentoring lessons, they also prepared posters for them or other educational materials, some sort of letters, which were in the context, conveying a message which was in line with what they were learning. So then we saw what the mentoring systems are. We saw all the children working with younger children, which we think is a very important element of learning. If you want someone to learn something, you had to make them apply their knowledge in a real-life situation. I think this would be all. There had to be a 3rd stage that we started with, the 3rd project. We started the 3rd cycle, the third project. It should have been designed mainly for these targeting teachers. It should have been targeting teachers. We wanted to enhance their efficacy, effectiveness, improve their socio-emotional skills, with the expectation that once you improve their skills, they would be able to change the entire climate in the school into a climate supporting socio-emotional development. But the pandemic broke out and it's still ongoing, and maybe once it finishes, we will continue with it. Thank you very much, Violeta, and I understand her zeal. After so many years working on this project, as she mentioned Angela Duckworth, I had the chance to work with her. I'm also familiar with how zestful she is, and I truly understand the need, Violeta's needs, to give us a deeper insight into the approaches that maybe starting from the University of Pennsylvania may sound too academic, but they're really rooted, experiential of learning by doing, experiential learning. And they can be very thoroughly applied, because being familiar with Angela, I can tell from my own experience that she developed this great concept based on a long-standing program at the university in Pennsylvania to strengthen the resilience. So maybe you will tell us something more about this later on, if you have the results, how this zest is related to psychological resilience, because they're closely related. And when it comes to the development of socio-emotional skills, I do believe that you've given us so far a very good foundation to start talking about the fact that well-being is not only developed during the lessons or in the psychologist's office, but that it is part of a broader network of activity and accountability on the part of all the stakeholders in the school during the lessons, outside of the lessons, during the extracurricular activities, and with the psychologist. When it comes to this, Alvin, can you tell us something more about your own experiences with activities with the students outside the curriculum, certain extracurricular activities which may be related to children's well-being, children's attainment, strengthening the socio-emotional skills, and especially when we speak about even fostering the sense of belonging to the school, of the children's sense of belonging to the school, especially when it comes to the municipality of Shatorizari. Yes, thank you. As we know, some of the extracurricular activities create prerequisites for the student to grow into an open-minded, authentic, and independent individual. And the purpose of extracurricular activities is to turn the school into a place where children socialize and an environment conducive to learning, and students are given the chance to pursue the interests that are not covered by the regular curriculum or are only partially included in the regular curriculum. Research has shown that taking part in extracurricular activities enables children to build a positive attitude towards the school and contributes to increased motivation among students to achieve better academic success. Also, research shows us that taking part in extracurricular activities decreases the risks in the behavior of the students and reduces the dropout rate. When it comes to improving the success through extracurricular activities and reducing the dropout rate, I would like to single out one particular extracurricular activity, apart from the many others that we have in the school, an activity which has proven to be a great success in our school. In Brakeramis Hamid, there is a big pool of music talent among the students, but according to me, this was not sufficiently taken advantage of. And exactly because of these reasons, in 2017, I established the Association for Multi-Ethnic Music Education, Roma Rock School, where I'm the executive director. And one of the biggest reasons why this Roma Rock School was founded is because apart from the huge music potential and talent that gift that young Roma children have, very few of them are educated, formally educated in music, which stops them from pursuing further music education or enrolling at secondary school for music or the university in terms of art. So apart from teaching instruments, there are workshops in sound engineering, meaning how to record a track in a studio, songwriting workshops, how we can write the lyrics of a song, how can we come up with the idea of a pop song. They create bands, pop bands, we create music, we have concerts, we record songs in professional studios together with videos for them. Right now, we have an open call to establish a new band, which is open until the 18th of March. So if anyone is interested, feel free to apply. All children aged 10 to 20 can apply, not only from Brakeramis Summit, all of them. And maybe the most important thing is that apart from the lessons where they learn how to play an instrument, children also get other type of formal education in music, musical theory and so on, in order to give them a good ground for them to pursue their music career later on in a secondary school, vocational school of music, or at the university. How does this affect children and their well-being? A condition to apply to Roma Rock School is for the student to have a grade point average of at least 3.5. With every upcoming trimester, the child needs to improve their GPA. It has often happened to us, apart from the huge talent of a certain child, to have to exclude the child because of the low academic success from the Roma Rock School, but Very often it has happened that the other members of the band, because a band must function as a whole, as one, it has happened often to see that the other members of the band help that this child who has been excluded in quotation marks to improve their academic success, because people who are in love with music are willing to do anything to come back and continue playing. And this is one way through which we manage to foster and nourish students' creativity, develop their talent, so that they could have a positive attitude towards the school, turn the school into a place where children can socialize, and an environment conducive to learning. And we have contributed to raising the students' motivation, increasing their motivation to achieve better success. I must say that it's one thing. It really is different when you feel like a rock star and are perceived as a rock star in the school. Thank you very much, Alvin, for this overview of an exceptionally successful extracurricular activity, I believe. And I think that there should be scientific research about the differences that have taken place when it comes to the sense of belonging among and the sense of ownership of the school among the students, and how this has contributed to them perceiving the school as a very pleasant environment. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ognen. We've already conducted this type of research, and it is available on our website. That's great. Thank you very much. So that this will motivate us to take a look at the results and to continue with these activities and research, which are really complementary.
So everything Alvin mentioned about the obvious development of these socio-emotional skills in students after such engaged activities, we go back to the role of the psychologist. Can the psychologist do more about redefining the approach to the student? What can the psychologist do in order to improve the well-being and the mental health of the student? Yes, the psychologist has a broad field for action. If he or she is truly aware of their role in the school, it's very important that the psychologist should know that he or she is there to listen to the children. And once you've given them that chance, we don't really need to be extremely creative, because the children will tell you what they need. Thus, this culture of active listening is sufficiently developed in students. Sometimes students are aggressive in their demands. They're clear that they need more than what they have, and that's become clear for everybody. I think the psychologist make sure that the privacy of the student is protected, but also to have them a voice. I have had cases where a psychologist works individually and has weekly or monthly meetings, and there is a space for psychologists to help with the extracurricular activities. The psychologist can bring new projects to the school, can make links with other schools so that the students from this school get to know students from other schools, so to promote Red Cross activities, promote cultural events, to find ways how to make sure that all the things that are missing during their in the classroom to make up for that. For example, if the students have an idea, let's say, to paint a wall, and you mentioned the teacher and the teachers. What has been your experience with active listening to the needs of the children by the teachers? Are teachers listening to their students? First of all, we need to know that in Macedonia now there are much less students than what used to be the case in the past. And now there is more room for everybody to do we have this culture of active listening? So we are working on it under the subject of civic education, and the children have this culture of actively asking for their opinions to be heard and their needs to be met. I think that the class teachers, those who are responsible for a particular class, are more sensitized to the needs of the children. For example, in a school with 100 teachers, not everybody of these 100 teachers are class teachers. What would you recommend along these lines? Would you recommend anything to develop the cooperation between the pedagogue psychologists and the teachers? I think that there is a lack of training in this topic. I think that our mentality, our culture requests from them just to give a lecture, and that would be all. And only sometimes they can help in an ad hoc manner with, let's say, cases of cyberbullying and so on. Lana, who mentioned those two children that there are minimum two who are not involved in the classroom, whether they are not invited and so on. There is a new way how the children make distinctions between their peers and exert violence. And there is a lot of room for the teachers there to act rather than just stay aside from that. And what you mentioned, it seems that the culture of non-competence is being developed. Yes, that's what I meant. You put it right. This culture of I'm not responsible for that should be abandoned, should be done away with. And unfortunately, there's been a long time that we haven't had training on this topic, how to support the teacher to know more about emotional intelligence, how to give support, and to direct, to gig. Sometimes they have problems coping with this quite basic things. So, and basically it should be an integral part of the teaching process, yes, and also a starting point, because we said if the child feels safe, he or she can thrive. There is a lot of room for action. I've attended such workshops, and I've had excellent experiences. Teachers loved it. They loved training on active listening, on creativity, tools for encouraging creativity in children. Topics such as inclusion are all welcome for the teachers. It's seems that we give them a little and we expect a lot of them. Yes, you're right. We need to give them support. Sometimes we are overwhelmed with administrative and bureaucratic chores rather than the essence. And I can see that they don't have a room enough to express their to help with other activities that would boost the children's socio-emotional skills. So this is a call to the institutions that the pedagogues and psychologists should have discretion to do more in this regard, and also the teachers should accept the fact that administration is part of their work. There are things that we like more to do and there are things we like less to do, but we should also try to work on combating dilemmas and apathy in teachers. They don't have much support and they have these dilemmas. They want to leave the country. We don't do much to help them to flourish during the class. So they should be supported. That they should be, it's up to us. When we are clear with that, the others are even more clear with that. And that an important factor for being a successful psychologist pedagogue is the personal well-being. And certainly there is a lot of room for pedagogues and psychologists to work together with teachers. And when we are talking about the effects of these interventions, for the end, let's ask Professor Violeta, do you have any feedback on the effects of the program? In order to leave a room for some future events, please give us just the highlights of the effects.
Sometimes it's good not to have the microphone on. When it comes to the first program, the one about zest, eagerness, we remember it well, on eagerness, how to be eager. It was a pilot program, and it was delivered in order to do impact and evaluation of the program according to all scientific methodological research rules. We carried out an analysis of its effects. That's why the World Bank financed this through their initiative and offered it as an effective and efficient model which would be offered to all the countries that needed it. Just let me remind you, we worked with 6th and 7th graders from the entire country who learn in the Macedonian and Albanian as language of instruction. In all these classes were divided randomly into 3 groups. We divided the children into 3 groups. One group consisted of classes of students who did their work on their own. They learned on their own from worksheets independently. The second group, apart from the worksheets, got support and guidance from a teacher. He or she, the teacher, was guiding them in their work with the worksheets. And the third group was the control group. The other two, the first two, were the experimental groups. And what did the evaluation show? There is an official report which is prepared and is available on the website, how all of this went, and to check the effects. In all three groups, before and after the intervention, we call this program an intervention scientifically, we held so-called, we measured several indicators. In the context of this conference, we measured social emotional development. So first we measured how much they believed of this, we measured the level of eagerness, we measured the tolerance to frustration, the motivational framework, and so on. So what did the results show after we processed the results? It showed that learning independently and with the teacher showed an improvement in the belief of the effects of this practice and in the level of eagerness. So these two parameters were definitely improved. But when they worked with the teacher, the effects, there were positive effects in all the indicators. So independent work is not so effective, at least in our culture, in our circumstances, compared to working together with under the guidance of a teacher. Independent, if we go by individually by teacher, independent learning affected the socio-emotional skills of girls more than boys, meaning that girls are more ready to learn independently. It affected better the children who learned in Macedonian compared to those who learn in Albanian. And seventh graders, it affected seventh graders better than sixth graders. Whereas learning with a teacher affected absolutely everyone, regardless of their sex, regardless of the language of instruction, regardless of their age. So we undertake another pilot program with evaluation, but we still don't have impact official results, so I cannot speak about it and I don't have enough time. So we'll leave it for another occasion. As I said, this would serve as a motive for an upcoming event where we could talk about the effects. Given the fact that it's already late, I believe that all of us are exhausted from this two-day conference and all the events that it included. I would just like to ask whether there are any additional questions. A question asked by Sigito Yasharov. What needs to be done so that children don't perceive the meeting with the school psychologist as punishment? How can teachers abandon this practice, in fact, of sending children to see the psychologist as punishment? What should be done? I can only share my own experience. At the start of every year, I go and introduce myself to those who just come. I tell what my job is. So I say, I am this person, I do this. If you want to see me, my door is open. In a way, I go to see them before they come and see them. So they are aware that this is just a person who is always around the hallways, that it's not someone stashed away, hidden in a dark office. Because I surveyed about certain topics and about optional extracurricular activities, and while I was doing that, as I do that, for the past 2 years I haven't done any of it apart from online workshops, and I think establishing this initial contact, the children see me and they have an image, an impression of who I am. So even if they're sent to see me, they know that there is a person who will welcome them there, and they know that they will come to see me. And I think that teachers have dropped this practice because the children didn't come out punished from my office, but they came out feeling calmer, and even, I wouldn't say that they were against the teachers, but they were encouraged in a way. So with this approach, you have annulled the negative effects both in the perception of the psychologist, and you prevented this practice. If you send someone for punishment and they don't get the punishment, it works. They gave personal examples like a clinical psychologist. The children do not react. Another case in point that when the psychologists manage to familiarize themselves with the students from the very beginning and establish this initial contact, and they gain their trust, the children's trust, and the effects of their work are much better. If you'll allow me to conclude that there are no other questions, and I would like to wrap this panel discussion up. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Alvin, thank you very much for your eagerness to show up despite the physical barrier and to contribute to this panel. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank Violetta, and I would like to thank all of you for listening to us, for your attention.
Благодарам и од моја страна.
I would also like to thank you. Dear guests, I believe that these 2 days of this education conference, we've met, we've heard, and we've learned about experiences. We saw new perspectives, gained new knowledge from the aspect of the socio-emotional learning, the well-being of children, digitalized teaching or the digitalization of learning, and on the other hand, the fast-growing technology and the schools. How are we keeping up or not keeping up with schools and technology? We heard about healthy schools, we heard about healthy education, about the importance of the school climate. And I think that from all of the things that we heard, or from these 2 days, will leave us richer, will take richness from these 2 days, new findings, and will be energized, incentivized to improve our future. So let's stop being what we are today. Even if we're not doing that bad, but why shouldn't we become better? Allow me in a few seconds. First of all, I must say that we must thank the initiators of this conference, the government of the Republic of North Macedonia and UNICEF, then the Embassy of the United Kingdom in Skopje, who truly support this initiative. All of you who are attending here on behalf of UNICEF, we salute you, but I would like to extend special gratitude to the people who were directly involved and responsible in the organization of this conference. Those are the representatives and people coming from, first of all, the Macedonian Center for Civic Education, known as MCGO. I would like to greet Nebojša, Dorina, Eva, Anastasia. I would like to greet the volunteers, the UNICEF volunteers, with their T-shirts, who always surround us during these 2 days, and we're working for you, working next to you and working for you. I would like to salute the tireless interpreters who were faced with whose task was not easy, trust me. They were doing their best to understand all the things that were being spoken about on the stage. And finally, last but not the least, the technical personnel, the sound technicians, the videographers, and the lighting technicians, without whom this conference wouldn't have been so successful. Thank you very much for your attention, for attending these 2 difficult days. Intellectual effort is always very... If you invest yourself in something, the intellectual fatigue is really a thing, but I believe that the results will be noble and very beneficial to us all. Once again, thank you very much. I hope to see you on similar events.